Hey guys, thank you for tuning in to another episode of InRange. This is a really exciting video actually because what we're bringing to you today is the relaunch of the What Would Stoner Do project. 3 years ago, almost 3 years ago now, What Would Stoner Do started in 2017 and we're coming up on 2020 right now. A lot of things have changed in the world in that regard, but what launched that project is I actually acquired a Colt SP1 and was shooting it, and I was shooting this gun, which is really the original AR-15, and it's light, wonderful, handy guys, and I'm like, what has happened to the AR since its inception? And as we know, Stoner and Sullivan and his crew were looking at using the most modern materials and building this lightweight, handy, accurate gun. And we've deviated a lot from that since then. And the What Would Stoner Do project was a revisit of new manufacturing capabilities, new materials, polymer lower, carbon fiber, all these things that when we started it, didn't realize that when it came together, man, it really came together in a big way.
I was really excited by the rifle that we came up with.
Yeah, and when handling it, using it, everyone we gave it to was like, this is amazing. And we really kind of struck something, not by accident, but it turned out it was even more than I would have ever expected.
Yeah, it is. What would Stoner have done? How do you take modern materials and technologies today, as opposed to 1957, and apply them to create a rifle that is primarily light, handy, and accurate?
Yeah, and that's the reason we see things like carbon fiber on it, and going back to the pencil barrel, for example, and the polymer lower. And the reason that's all modern materials, which I think, frankly, think Stoner and Sullivan would have been laser focused on in 2017, and it's even more so in 2020.
So the core of the rifle really was the lower receiver.
Yeah, it was.
And this was specifically because we chose a polymer lower. Mm-hmm. And every polymer lower except the one we chose is basically garbage. They're copies of the original AR lower made in polymer, and they're not strong in the right places, and they break, and they're crap. However, there was one that we found, and it was manufactured originally by Cavalry Arms. It then moved over to GWAX. And what they did was actually mold the receiver, the pistol grip, and the buttstock all together into a single component. And that gave it the strength. This was designed from the ground up to be made as a molded polymer item. And it had the strength to survive as such. There's no reason that polymer can't be used for the lower as long as you design it for the material that you're making it out of. So, as it turned out, GWAX had made their last run of receivers in 2013, and they just had a couple thousand of them in stock that they were selling slowly a few hundred per year until What Would Stoner Do came out, and then they ran through their entire stock in something like 9 months. And when we started looking for more GWAX receivers to continue experimenting with this project, and when you guys started looking for them to build the same style of rifle, they're gone. Like, you can only find them on the secondary market now because they're sold out. So we tried to get in touch with GWAX to get more of these made. For one thing, we just wanted more. We also thought, there are some areas where we think we could make some improvements. We could refine the design even more. Mm-hmm. We'd love to talk to GWAX about doing this. Well, the problem is they can't. GWAX is, for all intents and purposes, gone. They are not capable of any further production. All of their tooling was worn out to the point of not being functional anymore, not being useful anymore. And so it has taken us a little while, but we are now happy to announce that we can reintroduce both the polymer lower and the complete new What Would Stoner Do rifle, which we're calling What Would Stoner Do 2020, and we're doing it through KE Arms.
Yeah, so because of the significant market demand for these items, combined with my personal experience working with the polymer receiver since 2001, first at Cav Arms, we were able to put together an investor group to fund the development of the new, what we're calling Mk3 mold, reinvigorating the polymer receiver concept, taking everything that was good about it and offering some new improvements.
So when we started this project, we always knew, that we never said that the What Would the Stoner Do 2017 build was the end game. No. This was like, all of these things are iterative. And we looked at this, and there was definitely deficiencies there that we would have liked to have changed. And this is an opportunity to do that.
Right. We were working with what parts are currently available in the market. And there's such a huge there's a huge market for the AR that we had a lot of interesting things to choose from. Mm-hmm. We picked the best. But in particular with the receiver, there were some things that could be done better. Yeah. So first off, one of the big problems was by the end of GWAX's production run, the quality control was starting to slip a little bit. And that's something that KE has now addressed with the new production, right?
Right. So the Mark II mold was worn out, wasn't really designed originally to have that many parts run through it. So starting fresh with a new tool, we can readdress the shortcomings that came up there. And having a new tool allows for a much longer service life of the mold itself. The other features we're going to address are there's some minor things to improve based upon the fact that, for example, like PMags didn't exist in 2003 when the Mark II was developed. So optimizing the mag well to work with PMags and readdressing some of the dimensional imperfections. One of the advantages we have by doing this at KE Arms is because we have 16 CNC machines, everything that was previously done with hand tools and trimming, we can now process through in a CNC machine. So it's going to be a lot more easy to produce these with minimal hand touch labor, and they should be more consistent in their trimming and finish.
Yeah, that ultimately would produce a better product. I mean,
Much
those original lowers there were literally people making sure that they were trying to make sure that they were dimensionally correct with hand files.
Right.
Old world type machining methodology, and that's not what's happening with the Mark III. This also allows us to readdress some of the things that were deficient in the original lower, and by doing this new lower, the Mark III, we're fixing a number of those things.
Yep.
And that is what's relaunching. Really, it's putting fuel into the rocket ship to restart what would Stoner do 2020.
Right. So we can go through some of the various improvements we've made. One that I would start off with is, and this is kind of funny to me, when Cav Arms originally designed the receiver, there was a lot of interest in 45 caliber pistol conversions of ARs using grease gun magazines, because there were a lot of grease gun magazines on the market. It was a hot thing at that time. So the original Cav Arms receiver, and thus the GWAX ones as well, the mag wells have this extra cutout in them so they can accommodate grease gun mags, and that cut away some of the material with the magazine catch, and it led to the magazine catch occasionally being not quite 100% reliable. Well, we're not really all that interested in 45 caliber grease gun mag conversions anymore, so we can get rid of that feature, leave the magazine well a proper, straight-walled, fully supported mag well in the Mark III.
Going back to the mag well itself is because we're doing this in a mold and it doesn't cost anything extra to fill more plastic in there really, other than the cost of material. It is now going to incorporate a flared mag well that's capable of accepting D60s and Surefire 60 rounders, the premier high cap mags on the market today, and make it much easier to reload under stress.
There were other little things they seem little, but on the clock they matter. Like, for example, the pistol grip angle of attack on the original Cav Mark II was different than what we experience on most common modern ARs. That's being addressed now with the new build.
Yeah, the grip angle and texture is going to be much more similar to common grips on the market today. Still an integral part of the receiver for that durability and rigidity and ease of manufacture, but I believe shooters will like the state the grip ends up in much better than the original Cav 15 Mark II.
Yeah. On the original What Would Stoner Do rifles, we put in a PDQ ambidextrous bolt release, which we really like, and we still really like it. The problem was that requires actually modifying lower receivers. Well, with the Mark III and with the complete What Would Stoner Do 2020s, that are going to be available exclusively through Brownells, those all come with the PDQs already installed. So because we have access to KE's CNC machinery, the modifications for the PDQ lever are going to be cut professionally and in an automated way right into the receivers right out of the gate. So there's not an issue of like having to get out the Dremel tool and make the little cuts and hope you don't.
And the reason that's not a standard thing, that's a feature we'll machine in afterwards, is the PDQ lever is a relatively expensive part.
Yeah.
And we want to make sure that people don't feel obligated to buy a bolt catch for the strip lowers that costs almost as much as a complete fire control group for their regular parts kit.
That's a good point. They're going to be selling, Brownells will be selling both stripped lowers and complete What Would Stoner Do 2020 rifles.
I was just saying, you just added some foreshadowing to this video that I think the audience didn't know yet. This is all culminating in something really interesting, which I had no idea would ever come to manifest, which is if you're watching this video, you may be watching it on InRangeTV on one of our multiple distribution points, or you may be watching it on Brownell's website, because they are going to be the distributor of the complete, ready-to-go What Would Stoner Do 2020 rifle. We're going to go through a series of things through this, just like we did in 2017. Every part of these components, the things that stay, the things that change, the fire control group, the bolt carrier group, the lower, the upper, the carbon fiber, all that stuff's being revisited. All of it's going to retain the original ideals.
Right.
Some of these components might change from 2017 to 2020 because technology changes. In just 3 years, a lot changes. But what's ultimately is going to turn into is a complete, ready-to-go rifle sold through Brownells.
It's really exciting.
It is really exciting because ever since we did this project, there's literally no joke, emails every day, messages every day to InRange about Can I find these lowers? What do I do? How do I build this? How do I put a sling on this? Which we'll get into in a minute. But all that turns into people trying to home build these things, which there's fun to do. But what we're going to have at the end of this is the ability to just go to Brownells, click the button, and have a What Would Stoner 2020 delivered essentially to you, of course, through your FFL. But you can get really what we believe is the most modern approach to the AR-15 delivered to you, ready to go with quality control and a warranty behind it.
Yeah.
So in terms of the sling, let's go to that.
So we're adding 2 M-LOK slots, well, 2 on each side, a forward one for a single point or a rear one to use a 2-point or 3-point sling if you like those. But the M-LOK slots will allow you to put QD sockets or HK style hook attachment points, or potentially just run a strap through there if you want to go on the cheap for it. So having those sling points in locations where people are using slings in a modern context is a huge improvement over the lower sling slot that was on the original CAV-15 Mark II.
That was always a struggle with the original. We always, people asked, how do I put a sling on this? And there's always all sorts of ways to jury rig it with Velcro or whatever. And the reality is with this new one that's being addressed, there's those M-LOK slots. You can put any M-LOK thingy you want on there, like you said, QD, sling swivel, or you could just run a strap through it, but that's addressing one of the major differences. There's also going to be a storage component in the buttstock, which was missing from the Mark II.
No, the Mark II had a trapdoor compartment. G-Wax, towards the end of their production run, eliminated it because of flashing at the back of the mold.
Ah, okay.
So they put a fixed trapdoor compartment on there. The Mark III will be able to accept any A1, A2, or any sort of adjustable butt plate on the end of it. To be determined what we supply it with, but those are upgrade options for various storage needs.
Very cool.
Cool.
So what you're hearing there is a relaunch of the entire project. We're going to have a whole series of videos. But here's the other cool part, not just on InRange. We're going to have a landing page right here on the Brownells website that's going to allow us to cover things in the What Would Stoner Do 2020 that's no longer allowed on YouTube.
Too spicy.
Too spicy, verboten, whatever the word is. But stuff like fire control group. We're going to get videos of actually showing the manufacturer of the lowers, like how they're molded, how they're welded together, all this stuff that we can't put on YouTube because it's gun manufacturing. You're going to see some of the videos on YouTube are our normal distribution points, but you're going to see the deep dive stuff here on Brownells. And hopefully this is all going to be a lead up to when the rifle is actually going to be available for you to purchase if you're interested in getting one.
Yep. It's exciting.
Oh man, it's super exciting. And it's really neat to have, I think it's really cool to approach the AR-15 with retro mindset, but modern manufacturing materials. And it's funny to think retro mindset is now going to polymer and carbon fiber. Back in, when Stoner was doing this, he was a heretic.
Yeah.
But nowadays, this is the next iteration of that. And it's super exciting to be working with K-Arms and of course us and Brownells to bring this to the market and see what I think is the next evolution of the AR-15.
All right, well, stick around. If you're watching on Brownells, stick around there because you'll definitely see everything there. If you're watching on InRange, we will give you pointers when there's new content available through Brownells because we can't publish it here on YouTube.
Thanks a lot.